Welcome back to today's Love Breakthrough virtual retreat. Now, with changing times, the dating scene is always changing. Even the apps that we're using is changing. Things are changing. And what I love about the conversation that I'm going to have with our expert today is not only is she on the front line and actually experiencing all of these changes in real time herself, but what she's going to share with you is information that's not actually readily available. Often, because things are changing so quickly, we can't just Google how best to set up a profile, how to navigate some of the pitfalls and the unique situations that we're coming up against when we're in the dating scene and really being open to finding a partner, and especially when it comes to online dating, which we're going to talk about a lot as well. Welcome to my beautiful client and amazing love coach, Claire Grigson.
Thank you so much for having me back again. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this topic. This is super exciting.
I think the word dating apps, and if you say the words like Tinder and Bumble and Hinge, and I think it's almost like saying the words money, sex, religion. People seem to have this charge, like this real charge when they think about the idea of dating apps, whether that's from their own experience or the experience of people they know. What's the current state of the situation with that? So do we have to use them? What's going on with that, Claire?
So, yeah, the feeling that I get with this is people are wanting more in real life meetups in terms of spending more time with people in person and having meetings that way. But there's also this feeling of but dating apps are the only way, right? And I think it's important to know that there's always going to be a middle ground with this. And I think it's really important with like online dating and the dating app side of things. A lot of it is how you choose to approach using the apps. Like, are you using them intentionally enough? Because I speak to a lot of women that are like, oh, I just hate the dating apps. I absolutely hate them. They're a waste of time. And I'm like, are you on them? Oh, well, yeah, I'm on Hinge and I'm on Bumble and I'm on Tinder, but I hate it. It's absolutely terrible. And I'll be like, okay, if this is how you're feeling about using the apps at this time, let's have a break. Let's step away. Let's work on your energy. Let's work on reframing things before you go back on and use them. Because, like anything in life, if you're approaching anything with a resistant energy, you're not going to get what you want through using them. So, I think there's a general feeling of people are fed up of the apps, but it's still not moved fully into people being open to meeting necessarily in real life. I know that there's a lot more single social events in the city where I live, Edinburgh, and people go, oh yeah, it's a great idea, I'm single, but I wouldn't go to it. I wouldn't go on my own. That sounds absolutely terrifying. So I think we're in this almost transition phase where people want to move away from the apps, but they're not quite sure how that looks or feels and they're not comfortable with it.
And it's interesting too that you mentioned stepping away and perhaps looking at things from a different perspective. It reminds me of a conversation I had recently with a friend of mine about the dating scene in Bali, obviously being a holiday destination, and it's extremely transient, lots of digital nomads, lots of people staying here either for just a holiday term or for several months. And then the long-term expats here are either married or they're kind of the Peter Pan types that just,
Yeah.
I mean, they have so much availability all the time. You've seen the same guys on the same apps single for like the last however long. And yes, to an extent, that's true, right? But looking at it from a reframed perspective is this is actually an opportunity. There's so many people moving through the island that if we looked at it from a positive perspective, it's the opportunity to meet someone that we might not have met. For example, the Diary of a CEO, Stephen, what's his name? Stephen Bartlett.
Bartlett.
I
Yeah.
believe he met his girlfriend in Bali as well. So, so our paths can cross in synchronistic ways with people that we might not expect if we have a really open attitude towards, well, these people I'm meeting on the apps, I probably wouldn't cross paths with, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I always say to my clients. Like, the apps provide an opportunity to connect with people that you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to connect with. And they're not the only way to meet somebody. And I think that's really important, because I think when you use the apps and put all this pressure on of, oh my God, I've got to go on and meet my future husband on here, and where is he? And there's nobody that I find attractive, or there's nobody that's aligned with me, and there's a sense of urgency and panic, then of course we're not going to have a good experience with using them. But when we can take the pressure off and go, this is actually really cool, because it's showing me a pool of people who I wouldn't necessarily cross paths with in the street. And I have an opportunity now to decide if this is someone that I potentially want to connect with and have a conversation with.
What are your thoughts about using apps as a way of meeting people and connecting, and almost practicing getting back into the swing of having conversations and relating with people, as opposed to sort of like expecting, swiping through and expecting that we've got to meet our soulmate, our future life partner right off the bat?
Yeah, like I think they are a great opportunity to be able to do that when you can frame it that way. And it's certainly something that I've done personally, and I encourage my clients to do, is go into the apps and use them with an open mind, and go on dates and take that expectation off. I'm, meeting this guy to assess whether he meets all of my checklist criteria, and is he my future husband, and are we aligned on every single thing, and see it as an opportunity just to connect with another human.
Claire, sometimes when we've done like a lot of self-development work and we're more into the energetics and understanding the dynamics and all of that sort of thing, we kind of feel like we've surpassed this need to master the apps or master dating, so to speak. But what I've almost noticed is, coming back full circle, sometimes there's some things that maybe we could have optimized a little bit better to improve our chances of finding and connecting better matches. Is that what you've noticed?
Yeah, like I definitely think, like when it comes to things like online dating and your dating profile, it's trying to be as clear and authentic in terms of what is truly important to you. So what I've noticed in a lot of the women that have done a lot of like really into personal development, done a lot of inner work, or spiritual, they'll be like, well, I want to meet a guy and he has to be, on a spiritual journey, and he has to be doing yoga 3 times a week like me, and he has to meditate every morning. And they're so specific in terms of what their person has to be doing and what they look like and the activities they're involved in. Does he call himself spiritual or not? And what I would say is strip that back and be like, okay, what's really important to me in terms of this person's values, but also how do I feel when I'm around them? And something that I have noticed is I have been on dates with guys who have nothing about spirituality in their profile. They have nothing about meditating or doing yoga or doing any of the things. But when we start having the conversations, what's really clear is actually we're very aligned in terms of our self-awareness, or the fact that we're conscious in terms of the actions that we take, or our values and what's important. So sometimes actually spirituality can be almost presented as a bit of a character, a bit of a front, like, well, I'm a really spiritual person and I have to meet someone else who's spiritual, or I'm really into astrology and therefore like the guy that I date, he needs to know all about a star sign, and I'm looking at the compatibilities of all of that. But what I would say is, see if you can be a little bit more open-minded in terms of stripping that back and connecting with someone in terms of like what's important to them in life. Are you really passionate about your work? Are they also really passionate in life about something, and connecting more on that level? And when you can approach it in that way, what I would say is you'll be really surprised at the connections that you make. And I'm going to share something really quickly. I was actually at a single social event last night, so an in-person event. And I walked in and I started chatting to a group of people, and there was a guy there that I was chatting to. Now, if I had seen this guy on the apps, I probably wouldn't have swiped for him, because on a surface level, it wouldn't appear that we've got all that much in common, because I could be really specific and be like, well, I want to date someone that is entrepreneurial and I want them to be a coach and I want them to be this and that. I used to have a long checklist. I ended up having a 2.5 hour conversation with this guy. And we were really aligned actually on quite a few different things. But I wouldn't have swiped for him if I had seen him, because he wouldn't be my typical type in terms of appearance wise, but also in terms of the interests that he has. But actually, when we spoke and we connected, it was kind of this deeper connection that I think can be really difficult to get a feel for online. So I guess, again, it's about being open-minded, almost like stepping away from what you think your person is going to be like and just being open-minded. Okay, I just want to connect with someone and almost have that feeling like, do we have that deeper conversation? Is there alignment in other places as well? And, you know, I'm not saying that this guy's the love of my life by any means, but I'm saying he's interesting. And I really enjoyed having a chat with him and just taking the pressure off and being like, it was cool to connect with him. And would I connect with him again? Absolutely. Like, we had fun.
That two-dimensional experience of someone that we're getting when we first see their profile can be so different to the three-dimensional experience of actually being with someone, seeing how they animate, hearing their voice, all of that. Isn't it interesting? And we can all think of examples of a person that looks really hot in photographs or we thought is really, really attractive. And then you talk to them and just, it for some reason, it just doesn't, they just don't seem as attractive.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't translate. And I think that's the thing with the apps. Like, naturally, when we're looking on the apps, the first thing that we notice is usually whether we're physically attracted to somebody or not. And that is important, right? If we're dating somebody, we want to be physically attracted to the person that we're with. But what can be more difficult is getting a feeling of what it's like to be around this person. And this is why I really love like in-person events or getting out and doing things that you enjoy doing, but making sure it's an event, there's an opportunity to talk to other people, because you can tell from chatting to someone fairly quickly whether there's a connection there. Like, yes, of course, you're not going to know if this is the love of your life instantaneously or whether you're aligned on every single part of your vision, but you can feel whether there's a connection with someone pretty quickly.
We don't want to just swipe right to everybody when it's someone that we literally know it's a hard no, but we don't want to get too picky just to choose that top 20%. What's your advice to find that balance in the middle?
So what I would encourage you to do is, if you're using the apps, first of all, before you go on the app, are you feeling grounded? Are you feeling relaxed? You don't want to be going on the app if you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die alone and I'm going to be single forever and I better get on Tinder and like just swipe and I need to find somebody. Make sure that you're feeling in a more relaxed, more grounded energy. Going into that, what I would say is really start to check in with yourself in terms of, how do I feel when I look at this person's profile? Is there curiosity there? That for me is a really big piece. If you can look at somebody's profile and you're like, okay, well, normally I like tall guys and he's like 5'8", but there's something in his bio that I'm really curious about. It's maybe something that he said or a feeling that you get from that. That is the type of person that it's worthwhile exploring with. So again, this isn't about saying, well, you've got to be open-minded and swipe on people where you look at them and go, oh, he's absolutely not for me. Like, no, this isn't about settling, but it's just starting to notice like some of the little nuances, some of the little subtleties. Like, there was a guy that I dated this year, and one of the things that I liked in his bio was he spoke about what we could do on a date. So he's like, let's grab some tacos, drink a margarita and watch a sunset. And I like that because it gave me an idea of what it would feel like. It felt quite relaxed. It felt quite fun. It was like, okay, there's something in nature. I enjoy that. And that was why I swiped right for him. It wasn't because he was ticking tons of different boxes for me. It's just because I was like, oh, it sounds like an experience that I would enjoy. There was a curiosity about that. So start to just notice, like, how do I feel when I'm reading this person's profile? Am I like, yeah, like he sounds kind of cool, and take the pressure off like, oh my God, but is he my future husband? And just be like, is this somebody that I would enjoy meeting up with and having a conversation with potentially?
You just hit on something that's actually quite cool. The fact that in his bio, he had a conversation starter. Talk to us about how that can be really useful for us as well.
When you are creating your online bio, you want to have something in there, like you said, that it's a conversation starter, something where the guy can drop you a message and be like, oh my God, like, I love doing hot yoga as well. Or, yeah, do you know what? I spent some time in Thailand and I love the Thai food. Something that they can look at and go, I resonate with that. And I can open the conversation, because I think as women, when we're using the apps, we just like assume for guys, oh, it's just easy. They just like drop us a message and then we just respond to that. But it's funny when I go on dates with guys and I chat to them, they're like, do you know what? That part's really hard because it feels like there's a lot of pressure, because often women expect us to make the first move. It's different if we're using Bumble, we know that. But if we're using like Tinder or Hinge, it's this pressure of like, women expect us to make the first move and they want us to say something that makes us stand out. But then we don't want to look like we're weird. But then we don't want to look like it's just a boring, hey, how are you? And I think there's a lot of guys that get quite worried about like, what's the right way to open a conversation? So what I would say is when you're creating your profile, make it easy for somebody to engage with your profile, to start that conversation with you, because I think we have this assumption of, oh yeah, but guys are good at this, but often they're worried about that, right? They're like, she looks really cool and I want to make a good impression. And it's really difficult if your bio is super non-specific with stuff. It's just like, yeah, I like eating out and I like music and I like going to the gym. Like, see if you can have something in it that is a little bit more specific, something that's like unique to you as well. Don't be afraid to stand out. And I know that when I started using the apps 5 years ago, my profile was probably very vanilla, because I was like, I just need as many people as possible to swipe on me, because it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. I just need to go on as many dates as possible. And now what I would say is make your profile like Marmite. You want to be attracting the people that also love Marmite and repelling the people that are like, oh no, absolutely not for me, not interested, because it's much more about quality over quantity.
That's so true. We want someone to have those me too moments, like as we've all experienced reading someone else's profile that has some unique things in there that we really connect to. And we're like, oh my God, me too. Oh my God, me too. And you want to set those up for men to potentially feel the same thing as well. What other tips do you have for us about creating a profile that's really going to optimize our experience?
So one of the things that I see a lot of women doing and men doing as well is listing what they don't want. So they have a list of all the things that they don't want. So I don't want anyone who's dishonest. I don't want anyone who cheats. I don't want one night stands. I don't want anything casual. The problem with that is when you have that kind of, I understand why people do it. I get it, because often there's, we've all been through experiences where we've been hurt or things haven't worked out, or we feel like perhaps we've been taken advantage of and we're trying to protect ourselves. But the problem with listing that in your online profile is, one, the energy that it's giving. And I know for me, if I see a guy with a list of what he doesn't want, it repels me. I'm like, it doesn't feel like a good energy.
With a big red cross.
Yeah, like you're just like, oh no, I don't like that energy. The second thing is, I guess there's the point of like universal law, and the universe doesn't understand when we say we don't want something. It only understands what we do want. So it is much more beneficial to put down the things that are important to you and you value. And thirdly, the type of guy that you're trying to repel by putting down your lists of this is what I don't want, he doesn't give a shit that you've put that on your profile, because he's probably not even reading it. He is just looking at the pictures, or perhaps his ego even sees it as a challenge. So all you do when you list what you don't want in a profile is you attract more of that, and you actually put off the guys who are more secure, who are more self-aware, who are more conscious, because that doesn't feel like good energy to be around someone that's listing all the things they don't want. So what I would say is really focus on, what do you value? What do you want to create more of? What are the things that light you up, that give you energy? Those are the sort of things that you want to put in your bio. And that is something that I really focus on in my own bio, is like, this is who I am and this is what I'm passionate about, and these are the things that I really value. And the feedback that I get consistently from guys that I match with, and I've talked to hundreds, I mean, possibly thousands of guys on online dating apps. And the consistent feedback that I've had, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, is you can feel your energy through your profile and you seem like a real person. And that is because I am unapologetically showing up as myself. And I'm like excited. I'm like, I'm excited to be here. And this is what I'm interested in doing. And this is what I'm creating. And this is what's important to me. And it's creating a feeling, because we only ever do anything in life for a feeling, right? So if someone connect with your profile and go, wow, like I can really feel some energy from this, or she seems like a really interesting person, or it's really clear that she's passionate, enthusiastic about life, whether that's about your business or your family or your kids or your friends or your social life. If you can get across what you're passionate about, people feel that. People are very drawn to that energy.
One of the common experiences that women have right now is matching, maybe even starting up conversations, and those conversations not going anywhere. And I think we could do a whole different training or podcast on why that might be. But just for the sake of like us optimizing this situation the best we can, what tips or advice do you have to maximize the number of matches that keep the conversation going, keep momentum in the conversation so that they turn into dates?
I think being intentional with your conversations and not being afraid. If you've maybe sent a couple of messages backwards and forwards and the other person is interested and they're asking questions and it's clear that they want to know more about you, if they haven't initiated that first meet up within whatever your parameters are, because everyone's different, maybe you say, within the first 5 messages, maybe it's in the first day or two, maybe it's in the first week. Don't be afraid to initiate that yourself and be like, hey, I'm really enjoying our conversation. I would love to continue this in real life, and put it out there. You're creating an opener for the guy to then pick that up and run with it. Now, if the guy picks it up and runs with it and is like, yeah, that would be amazing. When are you free? Brilliant. Let's get a date in the diary. If you notice that he doesn't pick up on that and there's avoidance there in terms of not wanting to initiate meeting in real life, then I think you need to ask yourself, is this a conversation I want to continue to invest time and energy in? Because again, not everybody is on the app for the same reason as you. There will be guys that are on the apps because they're like, I want to meet people in real life too. And yeah, absolutely, let's meet up. But there are other guys that are on the apps because they're bored or they're lonely or they're just passing time or they just want an ego stroke. And I think that starts to become apparent when you start to get intentional in terms of, okay, I feel like this is at a point now where I want to meet up and they haven't initiated it. Open it, make it easy for them to ask you out on a date. And if they don't take that initiative and they don't then go, yeah, let's continue this in real life, when are you free? Then decide, do I want to continue to invest more time and energy? And I know for me, I don't want someone who opens up the conversation with, oh, you're really hot, I want to take you out. I want someone that shows a little bit of an interest first and ascertaining whether there's some kind of alignment there. But I'm also absolutely not interested in the guy that just wants to play message ping pong for days and days and days. Like, I'm on the apps with the intention of meeting people in real life, but create the opener. Because again, it's just some guys have experienced a lot of rejection on the apps and they're scared to initiate maybe that initial meetup.
Tinder or Bumble is sitting right there on our phone next to Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. It just does make sense that if someone's not really serious, they could actually just be opening up the app, getting a bit of their egos, getting a bit of a hit, getting a bit of dopamine, but not necessarily having the intention of using it as a tool to find a partner. Are there any other telltale signs then, if we're going to be matching potentially with these sorts of guys? How else might we figure out pretty early on before we've invested too much? Is there any other things that you've noticed as far as the communication that might indicate they're not really serious?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the really obvious thing. So if someone's opening up the conversation and they're turning it into sexual chat straight away, or it's turning sexual very quickly, that's an indicator of somebody's not interested in.
How is the best way to handle that in a feminine, gracious, empowered way when the chat goes to an icky place?
Yeah, so I think for me, I would probably be quite, I guess, playful in terms of like, I appreciate that you find me very attractive, but what I'm really interested in is getting to know you on a deeper level, or starting to connect on a deeper level, or meeting up in person so we can see whether we vibe. And I think that when you can do it in a way that's playful, but also there's a boundary there, you can then see how that person reacts to it. And it might be they go, oh, hey, like I didn't mean to sort of overstep the mark. And the conversation maybe comes back round to talking about things that aren't commenting on your physical appearance, or that they find you really attractive, they find you really hot or whatnot. For me, it's not an issue if a guy comments on my appearance or how I look, or the fact that they find me attractive. Like, I am okay with that. But I also need to see that there's an intention that they want to get to know me as a person as well. And I think there can be a tendency for us to get very like defensive and reactive and don't comment on my appearance. And I don't like that. But yeah, I guess again, everybody's individual and it's what feels comfortable for you. But I think just redirecting the conversation, and if somebody doesn't take the hint and they're not picking up on that and they're continuing to be persistent, that for me is when the firm boundary is set down of, I'm not continuing this conversation anymore. We're clearly not aligned in terms of what we're looking for.
Okay, what about the scenarios where we're chatting with someone and the chat starts to lose momentum? Is it something that we could be putting energy into re-engaging that person, or do you take that as a sign they're not really interested, they're not asking me questions, their chat's really slow? How do you handle those conversations that just kind of start, you can feel them starting to peter out a little bit?
I think it can be really easy, first of all, to make assumptions. So the assumption of the conversation's dropping off and therefore they're not serious, or they're not invested, or they're not engaged or interested. And I think we forget that people have whole lives that are going on in the background. Sometimes people have kids, they have businesses, they have busy careers, they've got a parent that's sick, they've got all kinds of things that are going on. So I always try to not make assumptions and just try to gain some clarity by saying, like, hey, like, I have really been enjoying our conversation. And do you want to carry this on again in real life? So for me, the suggestion or the invitation is, let's carry this on in person. Because for me, what I would much rather do is, if I've been chatting to someone and I've been enjoying it and then it starts to dip off, I would rather say, like, would you like to meet up in real life and set a date in the diary? Maybe that's in a week's time. Now, I don't need us to continue to having day-to-day conversation until that point, because the date's been set. There's an intention there. We're going to continue this in real life. Now, if you open up that invitation and the person doesn't run with that invitation, then I would go, again, I wouldn't make the assumption of, oh, it's because they're not interested in me, but it may be that there's something going on much bigger in the background that I'm not aware of, and they're not in a space where they want to continue to engage in conversation, and that's okay. So I think it's about almost like, and I know it feels difficult because it goes against human nature, but not taking things so personally, knowing that all of us have lots of things that are going on. It is almost not normal behavior to be putting someone that you don't know at the very top of your priority list. It's almost not healthy to be doing that. So understanding that people have whole lives going on. If the person doesn't get back to you, or they don't go, let's meet up, just let it go. Start engaging in other conversations. Might be that person comes back to you in 2 weeks and says, I'm really sorry, there was a family emergency, there was loads of stuff going on, when can I take you out? Great, you can arrange to do something at that point. But ask for clarity, open it up, allow there to be an invitation there. If there's not, that's your answer, move on.
There's two other scenarios I'd love to get your advice or thoughts on. One is this potential to feel really burnt out with it, to have all these chats going on and have your phone pinging with conversations all the time, and for it to just to feel like a drainer. And then the other scenario, and it might be not necessarily just the early stages of conversation, but when we're just chatting with just one person and we really are kind of in that like waiting, wishing, hoping, when am I going to hear from him kind of energy, which is also not amazing either. So, what advice do you have for either or both of those different scenarios?
So for this scenario where there's a feeling of burnout and overwhelm, or just I'm just fed up, I can't do this anymore, my advice would be step back and take a break. Like your body, your nervous system is telling you something if this isn't feeling good anymore. Take the pressure off. If you're using the apps from a place of burnout, you're not going to meet the person that you want to meet anyway, because you're not in the right energy for that. So what I would say is it's an indication of you have been putting directing too much of your energy outwards and not directing enough of your energy inwards.
And I know there's going to be a portion of women who do actually have some good chats going on, but managing different chats and new matches and things like that is a lot. One of the things that I always recommend is actually just setting yourself aside a certain window every single day, rather than having notifications coming on your phone all the time and trying to shoot a message off here and a message off there in between what you're doing during the day or night. Just either a window in the morning or a window in the evening, just to open up, respond to everything. Because we get so used to being so available and pinging messages back and forwards all day. I think that, it's not necessary. It's not actually necessary. Okay, so what about, I'm chatting with this great guy, things seem to be going so well, and I think sometimes this even comes from a place of nervousness, like I'm really interested in him. I think this could be really good, and I'm almost nervous to meet him. But then feeling yourself going into, for us anxious attachment girls, going into that space of anxiety a little bit of like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to hear from him. What advice do you have for managing that?
So when you notice that is coming up for you, there's this feeling of anxiousness or hyperfixation on this person. What's he thinking and what's he feeling? And are we going to meet up? And are we going to get married? Because we can end up future projecting way into the future. That is an indication, again, to just take a little step back and start to focus some of that energy back onto you, in terms of how can we regulate your nervous system in that moment? Because in that state, we're quite dysregulated. So that might be taking a few deep breaths. It might be calling a friend. It might be getting out for a walk. So using the practices, doing the things that help to calm your nervous system in that moment. I think the other thing is bringing in perspective. So when we're in the really early stages of dating, particularly when we're at the point of we've not met somebody yet, or we've maybe only been on 2, 3, 4, 5 dates, this is really early stage. You are just getting to know, like, you don't really know this person at all. You only know the information that they have chosen to give you. And in dating, everybody's going to put their best foot forward to begin with. So just having some perspective with it and taking the pressure off, and knowing that this is actually the opportunity for you to see whether this is somebody that you even want to spend more time with. Like, how do I feel about them? Because there can be this real tendency to put the pressure on of, oh my God, what do they think of me? Like, does he like me? Does he find me attractive? Does he want to go on a date with me? Let's just take that pressure off and let's get curious about, how do you feel about this person? You might be like, yeah, like, he's handsome and I'm enjoying our conversation and it seems like we have things in common and I'm excited. It's okay to be excited, because we allow ourselves to be excited about other things. It's okay to feel excited about the prospect of meeting somebody, but allow yourself to zoom out and have a little bit of perspective on it as well. This is somebody that you've maybe just been chatting to for a week or two. Let's not make them the center of your universe. Let's just make them an exciting prospect, an exciting connection. You don't know what way it's going to go. You could end up meeting this person and being like, actually, there's not that connection there that I thought there was going to be. You might end up meeting this person, you end up being like great friends with them. Or it could just be a really amazing one-time experience, but just allowing it to be what it is in that moment rather than all the future projecting. And I know that for those of us that lean more anxious, we love to future project. We love it. We're like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And, you know, it's 6 months' time and his mum loves me. And we've created this whole sort of situation and scenario in our heads, but actually allowing yourself to step back and just be present in what this is and seeing it for what it is.
Run us through step by step everything you do to prepare for a date with someone who you have a feeling you're going to have a great connection with.
Something that I'm very aware of in terms of my energy is I can have a lot of masculine energy, and I like to show up to a date more in my feminine energy, more in my flow. So what I'll do to prepare for that is I'll listen to a meditation, or I'll do some breath work, or I'll do some journaling, or even like I love like dancing in front of the mirror, like naked or in my underwear. Like I feel really like in my feminine and flow when I do that. So I might do that before a date, allow myself to move from that more masculine energy that I can be in my business and the other work that I do, and really be conscious about shifting into my feminine energy, that more open, receptive, soft place. So I like to make sure that I feel good, that I like to have a nice outfit picked out, because that's something that I enjoy. I'm not doing it for the other person. I'm doing it because I love fashion and I love clothes, and I love being like, oh, I've got a cute new skirt that I got in Vinted and I'm going to wear that with my boots. It's going to look really cute. But also focusing on the energy side of things and reminding myself, this is just going along and being open to having a connection with this person. This isn't about going along and conducting a job interview and I'm going to bring out my list of questions and my checklist and check everything off and see if he's my future husband. I'm just having a human to human conversation. I'm allowing myself to be present in that moment. I'm noticing how I feel in my body when I'm around that person with curiosity, and seeing whether this is somebody that I want to spend more time with or not. And either way, there's no pressure. If I get to the end of the date and I'm like, oh, do you know what? I'm really excited about seeing this person again. That's cool. Let's see what happens and what develops. If I'm feeling, do you know what? Yeah, they were a nice person, but I'm not really feeling that pull or that curiosity to see them again, that's also okay.
Is there anything else that, or any other sort of guidelines, any framework, any things that you do, any setting up a friend to call at a certain time, any rules about where I do and don't go? Is there anything else you'd like to share with the ladies about, you know, preparing for or setting up a date to go really well?
Yeah, so I think for me, I wouldn't go and meet somebody like in their house or have them over to mine for a first date. Like I want it to be somewhere that is a public place. Again, it's just sort of basic things like safety. You don't actually know this person. What can be really helpful as well is when you come home from the date, almost having a little bit of a routine or a ritual or something that you do to ground yourself afterwards. Because especially when we're anxiously attached, if we go on a date and it goes really well, there can be this feeling like, oh my God, like I'm obsessed with him. He is so amazing and I can't stop thinking about him. And there's all these feelings that come up and that can be exciting. But I think it's also really important that you're checking back in with yourself and you're grounding yourself. So that might be that when you come home from the date, you run yourself a hot bath and you jump in and you just, let's just allow myself to kind of decompress. It might be that you journal and like, how did I feel and what was interesting and what am I curious about and what came up for me. But it can be really grounding to have something that you do post date to allow yourself to connect back with you, and almost that reminder of, do you know what, I am a whole human being, whether I see this person again or not, whether they ask me out again on another date or not. I know that I'm valuable and that I'm worthy and that I'm reconnecting back to me, and I'm not putting all of my self-value on whether this person asks me out again or not. Because you know what? Sometimes he will and sometimes he won't. Sometimes you can go on a date and feel like it went really well, and the other person can be like, I've realized that actually I'm not ready to date. or I'm just not in a space, or I've realized that, you know what, I think you're amazing, but we're not aligned on something that's really big, and I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time. And that is part, like, rejection is a natural and normal part of dating. It's going to happen to everybody. We're all going to get rejected, and we're all going to have to reject other people at points.
It's a really good tip, Claire, because we have to allow ourselves for that feeling of rejection, if it does come up, to move through us rather than stuffing it down. And there was just a download that I got for a couple of girls, maybe a few more that are listening, because I remember a date that I went on where I really, really had to do a lot of that. I came home and I cried and cried and cried. And as I was driving home, and I gave the guy a ride home, and he tried to kiss me on the cheek in the car, and I just cried and cried and cried. And the reason why that was is because I tried to date too soon after a breakup. Men seem to feel like this is a good idea for them. They seem to feel like they need to just know that they're still desirable on the market, even if maybe they're not commitment ready. But I just want to, I guess, speak to the sensitive souls out there that for a lot of us women, this is not the right strategy to try and start dating again too soon. Often it can actually make us feel worse, bring back feelings of our ex, and all the open up the whole Pandora's box of sadness about why the relationship didn't work and why aren't I with him and all of that. So I know there's a few girls that really needed to hear that. I just wanted to pop that in too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also important that if you find yourself in that situation and you thought you were ready to date, and you go on a date and you're like, oh my God, I'm really not, to take the judgment off. Like, it doesn't make you a bad person or dishonest because you thought you were ready and then you actually weren't. Like, sometimes we don't know until we're actually in the experience and we're feeling it, whether we're in a space where we're truly open and emotionally available or we're not. And I've been in those situations as well, where I genuinely thought I was really ready to, like, meet somebody for a relationship, and then I'm in the situation and I'm like, I'm not, like, this isn't the right time for me. And I've been in situations with guys where they have had really good intention in terms of, like, I feel like I am ready. And then we've started to date and they've been like, I just don't think this is the space. We're in different places or different spaces, or this isn't the space that I want to be in right now. It doesn't make them a bad person. We're human, and sometimes we don't know where we're at until we're actually in it.
You have a beautiful meditation, links below the video. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so with this meditation, this is for you if you experience anxiety in your dating life, in your love life, in your relationship. And that's a lot of us, right? Even if we're not anxiously attached, we can be more avoidant, we can be more secure and still have that anxiety coming up. So this is a really beautiful grounding meditation for when you are experiencing those moments of anxiety or self-doubt. Perhaps you're just, you're about to go on a date, or you've come home from a date and you're not quite sure how it went, or there's not that clarity there. And it just really allows you to reconnect back with yourself. So there's an element of that nervous system regulation, because when we are feeling unsafe, it's very difficult for us to think logically and rationally about what's kind of gone on. So regulating your nervous system, but also creating that safe base, that safe anchor within yourself. Because when you're able to do that, it allows you to actually go out into the dating world and take more risks in terms of opening yourself up. I don't mean risks in terms of taking physical risks or dating people that are dodgy, but in terms of allowing yourself to be open. Because dating and loving is a risk. We are opening ourselves up to somebody and there's no guarantee of what the outcome is going to be. But when we have that safe, secure space within ourselves, it enables us to be braver, to be more courageous, and to be like, I'm going to be open. I'm going to see what happens. And I know that regardless of what the outcome is going to be, I've got this space within myself that I can connect with, that is safe, that is secure, and that is grounded.
Sounds beautiful. So this would be something that we could ideally as well do in our pre-date preparation. There's actually one more question. I want to have a bit of a banter about this with you and see where we can go with this. We know that men love confidence, right? And sometimes I wonder, there's energy, I think, sometimes that we put towards trying to come across as being confident. But then we also know calm and grounded and relaxed and receptive is the feminine energy. But I wonder whether in that energy, sometimes we feel like we don't want to be so relaxed that we're almost too quiet or too boring. Are you with me?
Yeah.
All right. So the energy that we're going on a date with, how do we know? Am I bringing a little bit too much of almost like this is very nuanced, but like a false confidence? Or am I too much in my sort of quiet, relaxed, feminine that I worry whether then I'm not bringing enough energy and fun to the date? What are your thoughts?
I think it's about having that grounded confidence, because and also I think you have to ask, like, what is my own definition of confidence? Because for some people say, oh, confidence has been like the loudest person in the room. It's been the most extroverted. It's walking in and knowing that you can have a conversation with every single person in there. But actually, confidence can be quiet. For me, confidence is being grounded in who you are, being comfortable is showing up as you, being able to be vulnerable, to be able to have real conversations with somebody, being able to express your opinion without fear of, oh my God, what if it puts them off or they don't agree with me? And I think that guys can feel that. They can feel the difference between somebody who is presenting a front of being confident and somebody who is genuinely confident because they're comfortable in themselves as a person. So for me, it's more about being able to go into that date and being comfortable and grounded in who you are. And I think that starts with having that relationship with yourself and being like, do you know what? I like myself. Like I'm in a space now where I can say, I really like myself. Like I genuinely think that I am a cool person. And there's going to be some guys that really resonate with my energy and they really like it. And there's going to be some guys where I am just not for them. Like we just do not align. And I am okay with that either way. Like I'm completely okay, because I have been that woman that has gone in being like, oh, I need to be like super extroverted and almost putting on a bit of a front. And I know that we've had these conversations before where something for me that I have noticed in the past, if I have met somebody who I've been like, oh my God, he is so fit, like he is so hot, funny Claire comes out. It's like this front. I'm going to give this guy the best date of his life and he is going to be roaring with laughter and I am super extroverted and super confident. He is never going to forget me. But it's actually not genuine, because it's almost this front that I have put on, and people always feel that. They always sort of see through that. And actually what I have found is the most beautiful connections I've had is when I've just gone into it and I'm like, I'm just going to be me and I'm going to approach this like I am having a conversation with a friend almost, and not because like I'm trying to take away any sexual attraction that there might be, but just taking that pressure off. And this is me and I'm going to express my opinions. And I believe that you can't ruin a genuine connection by just showing up as yourself.
And the reality is we can't continue that almost like performative persona. We can't continue that in a lifelong relationship with somebody.
So,
yeah, for anyone who's sort of thinking, like the real me, like what does that really mean? How do I know? How would I know if I'm being a little bit too energetically overconfident or being a little bit too reserved? I would say, who are you when you're around your family members and your friends that you are most comfortable and have no fear of judgment? You can be completely yourself. And that's kind of the person that we want to bring, right?
that is the part of you that you want to practice cultivating when you go on dates. And it does take practice, because a lot of us will put a front on because we're trying to protect ourselves, because it's actually really scary to go on a date and be vulnerable and open. And I think that for all of us to some degree, like when we show up on a first date, there's probably a version of us that we kind of step into. And I know that for me, what I'm really practicing is stripping all that back and just seeing this is like I'm meeting someone to have a conversation with them, to just have a really genuine conversation and to notice like how I feel in my body when I'm around them, and knowing that either way, whether I see them again or not, whether I like them or not, whether they like me or not, it's not a reflection on my worth or my value. And I only want to be with someone who's aligned with the real me. Like I want a man to see me who appreciates my soul and appreciates my essence, but they're never going to get to that when I'm in that persona of funny Claire, extroverted Claire.
One really important piece of advice that you feel really passionate about sharing with everybody, what would you tell them?
The one thing that I always come back to with all of my coaching clients, because I coach in a couple of different spaces, is the only person that you are guaranteed to wake up to every day for the rest of your life is you. And that is why it is so important to build that strong self-relationship, because that genuinely is the foundation for every single area of your life. Your external relationships are giving you information about the relationship that you're having with yourself. And my own experience was for 34, 35 years of my life, I had no relationship with myself because I was so fixated on getting external validation and approval from everybody else. Like my self-worth rested on getting that from my external relationships, specifically the relationships with men. And what has been the biggest shift in my life is building that relationship with me, like really getting to understand myself on a deeper level. And the other part that comes into that, this that you know that we're both aligned on, is learning about your attachment style. Like learn about your attachment style, build that awareness, and I promise you will first of all be able to identify the patterns and have more understanding of the patterns in your dating life. But second of all, you can learn how to shift and change and move towards secure attachment. And that has probably been the biggest game changer in my dating life. The biggest game changer, moving from very anxiously attached to much more securely attached, has really shifted and changed not just the type of men that I attract in, but the choices that I make, the choices that I'm making in terms of people that I choose to date or spend time with.
Thank you so much, Claire. I really appreciate the time that you've shared with us today. Make sure you follow Claire on Instagram. Her TikTok is on fire. Everything is linked up down below. We will see you all again for another training on the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat.
Ooh.